Your paint is not ruined. This is a step-by-step guide on how to undo 22 years of paint damage through paint correction. Made simple. How's that? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dylan with Mad Vehicle Protection in Simi Valley, California. I've been performing paint correction for over 5 years now, and today I'm going to equip you with all the tools you need to confidently restore your paint to better than new condition in 6 steps. Step number 1 is going to be to clean off all the dirt. Step 2, deep clean the car. Step 3, protect your plastics and your rubbers. Step 4, use an IPA. Step 5 is going to be the cutting stage. And step 6 is going to be your final polishing stage, because we are doing a 2-step correction today. Step 1, get off the dirt. There's a couple different options here. My favorite option is going to be using a pressure washer and using your wash mitts on the car to remove all dust, dirt, and debris, because I think using a pressure washer gets into a lot of these areas that you're not able to really get to with just a towel. We break this down into multiple stages. First is going to be the clay bar. Second is going to be the iron remover. For today's example, we are just going to be wiping down this panel because this car was just washed and clay barred last week. 3 is going to be protecting your plastics and your rubbers, because these rubbers and plastics can be nearly permanently damaged if you hit that with a polisher. There are ways to remove it in some scenarios, but you'd rather not have to worry about it. Some people might rush this process and say it's really not that important. You don't need to get the tape perfectly on the plastics or the rubbers. However, I highly disagree. And also, if you don't take your time with this process and you lazily put that tape on there, that tape can definitely interrupt your polishing process. Tape has glue on it, and if you hit that glue or that tape, you can get glue into your polishing pad, and that makes a mess. Step number 4 is going to be wiping the panel down with some isopropyl alcohol or IPA. This is going to take that clean slate finish to the next level. This is going to remove all sorts of waxes or sealants or anything that's on this paint. This is going to finish it off, because the clay bar and the iron remover are not guaranteed to take off all waxes and sealants. Step 5 is going to be the cutting stage. This step is aimed towards removing the defects. Your paint is not infinite. There is a certain amount of paint on your car. This step is going to remove some of that paint. One of the safest ways to ensure that you're not going to burn through your paint is going to be your polisher choice. If you're a DIYer and you do not have a polisher right now, I would highly recommend the Griots G9 polisher. I believe this polisher has an 8mm throw, which is basically how much the machine moves this pad side to side so that it creates that spinning motion when the machine is on. Having a smaller throw is going to create a lot less heat on the surface, and it's going to be a much safer method to use, especially when starting out in paint correction. I don't think you're going to have any issue with possibly burning through your paint if you use a polisher like that. The next thing to keep in mind with this cutting stage is going to be the heat that you are putting on the panel. Burning through your paint actually means exactly what it says. You are creating so much heat with the polisher and that panel that it literally burns through the clear coat and goes straight through to your base coat. So when you're doing this cutting stage, you need to understand that you cannot get that panel so hot that you can barely touch it. Things that can cause that are going to be not enough polish or lubrication on the pad, sitting in one place for too long, sitting on the edge of a panel, not fast enough hand movement, and lastly, not using water while doing correction. If you avoid all of those things, truly you have nothing to worry about as long as you have enough paint on your panel. If you're just getting into paint correction, trust me, it's really not that scary worrying about burning through paint. Just do not stay in one place for too long. Keep that polisher moving, and don't step up to a heavier cutting polisher if you are not comfortable with at least an 8mm throw polisher. Before we turn the polisher on, I want to talk about your compound of choice. In the cutting stage, you are going to be using a compound. Compounds cut. They cut into the paint much, much heavier than a polish can. A polish is more for adding depth into the paint, removing some very, very light defects, and really just bringing out that gloss. A compound is made for defect removal. Now there are different compounds. There are compounds that are ultra cutting, like Ultra Cut, and there are compounds that are more moderate, and there are also lighter compounds as well for softer paint. For 95% of people out there, I think Ultra Cut by CarPro is going to be a great option. Because most cars out there do have pretty heavy defects in them, this is going to be the one I'd recommend. Something to consider when picking your compound. Typically, the more cut that you have, the more haze it's going to leave behind. So you're going to have to go in and polish it more, or make sure that you finish your cycle out, which we'll get into in a little bit, with your compound. And as I was going into the compound, I want to mention that there are different types of paints on every single vehicle. There are soft paints and there are hard paints. For example, GM has soft paint. Soft paint is paint that can be scratched easily and it can also be corrected easily. Basically meaning that the clear coat is a lot more malleable than hard paint. So great for correction, but scratches are going to get into that paint a lot easier. And a hard paint example would be a BMW or a Mercedes. These vehicles have harder paint, meaning that it is harder to scratch them, but it is also harder to correct them. So you're going to need a heavier cutting compound when dealing with those paints. And before we finally jump into actually using the polisher, let's go over a few tools you're gonna need right by your side when doing correction. Tool number one is going to be using a pad cleaning brush or using an air compressor, because that blows out your pad and can clean it as well. But you need something that is going to fluff up these fibers, because these fibers do get matted down when doing the correction, and also cleaning out all of the excess compound and clear coat that you're pulling up off of the paint. Next tool is going to be some water, or you could use some clay lube as well. I've heard that works. But this is going to first cool down your panel. Second, it's going to lubricate your pad. Third, it's also going to pull out all of that compound and polish that is stuck into the pad and bring it out onto your panel, and it's almost like you just added more compound. It's also going to give you some heavier cutting because of that. Thirdly, we have our detailing light. This is probably the best bang for your buck. I really do like this detailing light. One of the first ones I ever bought. It's great. Harbor Freight, get it. I also do like to keep the IPA close by, because I do wipe down my panel with IPA right before I go in and correct it, because there is polishing dust from the previous panel you were working on getting on there, and just dust flying around in the air. And lastly is going to be your towel. You're going to need a fluffy, brand new level of clean towel to use during correction, because you don't want to put in scratches while you're trying to remove them. If you guys are interested in all the tools you need for a DIY paint correction and also a professional level paint correction, click this video in the top right. This is going to take you to our last video that we made going over exactly what I just talked about. Let's get to paint correction. Let's prime our pad. The pad choice for today is going to be a Meguiar's microfiber cutting pad. This is something that I definitely think 90% of you guys are going to be using in your two-step correction. Unless your car is absolutely hammered, or if it's in really good shape, this is definitely a good option. With microfiber cutting pads, you need to prime them. Priming is basically just getting all the fibers wet, lubricated, filled with compound before you go in and correct that paint. Because again, having proper lubrication is key when it comes to not burning through your paint. Also, don't mind the GoPro, this is for you. So you're gonna put about that amount of product on your cutting pad. You could put a little bit less, you could put a little bit more. If you want more cut, put more. And if you just want a lot of compound on that panel, you could do that. The only problem is you're gonna have a lot of haze left behind, and I'll show you what that is in just a minute. Now that I've just primed my pad, I don't need to add product to this. This has enough product in it. Dabbing out your product like this is not something you have to do. I just like to do it. I like to add more compound as I go in my cycle. As far as speed goes, for most machines, 3 or 4 is probably all you're gonna need. unless you're getting into some really weird areas, then you could step it up if you have to. What you're gonna focus on here is just having about 8 to 10 pounds of pressure down on this pad and making sure that you are understanding where your polishing pad is hitting. Because my pad right now, if the cameraman could come over here and take a look, it is not fully flat. Even if I go right here, it's not fully flat. If I press it all the way in, it is not touching every bit of paint that I see right now. You have to angle the polisher. You have to understand where that pressure is. If you've heard of a crosshatch pattern, it's not a bad thing. You definitely can do it. However, you don't need to do it. On very flat sections, I will do it. But on a section like this, that I only have about 2 of my polishing pads of room, I'm not gonna do this up and down motion. I'm just going to follow this and break it down into about 3 passes and just keep doing that, because I know I'm hitting every bit of that paint. Again, that kind of comes with experience, but you don't have to do this side to side and then up and down all the time. You could definitely just go side to side if it's a section that it works with. Now, how do you know when you are done or when you are stopping to clean out your pad? It's not more so how many passes you're doing. It's really about how big of a section you are doing with your polisher. I'm not going to sit here and say that you have to do a 2 foot by 2 foot section. I think it really does depend on what panel you're doing, how much space you have to work with, how much compound is on your pad, how many times you're going to go in and clean that pad out. It's more of an experience thing to understand how big of a section you can do. And then the next thing to worry about besides the section that you were doing is going to be how many passes you are doing. What I learned from Jeremy Stevens over at Shine Supply is going to be that when you're doing your pass, after you have completed the whole section, then you go back and you complete the section again, and that is considered one pass. Not just going from the starting point to the end point. It is going from the starting point, doing your section, and then going backwards and doing that section again. That is one pass. Personally, I adopt that method and I love it. So after that pass, I'm going to take the polisher off, and then I'm going to take my pad cleaning brush or the air compressor and clean the pad. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our section that we just completed, and we're going to assess if it needs more compound, if it needs water, or if we're just going to clean our pad and just go right back on it. And again, this is kind of an experience thing, but looking at this panel with my experience, I would say I'm going to do just a little spray of water just to keep it lubricated and give it a little bit more cut, because I do see some deeper scratches in here that I'm going to want to attack. And then I'm going to go in with my pass. If this was a lot more full with compound, then I would not add any more and I would just go straight in after I clean my pad. And vice versa, if there's barely any compound and you can barely see it, then I'm going to add more compound to that pad to make sure that we are having enough compound to keep that lubrication and also work with our panel so we can remove those defects. And with water, you have the option to either spray on the pad or you could spray on the panel. Personally, I do like spraying on the panel. That amount of water is literally all you need, and you're gonna see the compound get a lot thicker because the compound is being pulled out of this pad. So it's gonna give us some more cutting. So after 2 passes with a 21 millimeter polisher on a cutting pad and some heavy cut, that's gonna do some work on this panel. So let's wipe this off. Let's take a look at our results. Let's see if we need to go back and correct any more. This is an off-road vehicle. It's also 22 years old, so it has a lot of defects. I already knew that going into this is not going to be a perfect correction, because what we're doing is a 2-step correction. This car truly needs a 3 to 4-step correction with sandpaper, a rotary polisher, a DA polisher, and also doing 2 steps with that DA polisher to really make this paint pop like we did on the other side of this car. If you guys can see it in the camera, I know it's hard, but this paint is extremely fuzzy. It has a lot of haze in it. This is what's going to be left behind when using a microfiber cutting pad or other cutting pads. And these are those defects that I was talking about when using the compound. This is why you need to go back and polish with a polish and a polishing pad to remove this. So let's say that we are done with the cutting step on this panel because it looks awesome, which it doesn't. But we're gonna go in and refine it and remove that haze. One thing I want to mention before we go into the polishing step, if you heard me earlier, I said that if you go back and you make sure you really cycle out your compounding step, you can leave less haze. A less aggressive pass with this cutting pad, and it's gonna minimize that haze just a little bit. Again, this is a 21mm polisher, so this is a heavier cutting polisher. It's not gonna minimize that haze as much as I'd like to, but that is why we're gonna go back with our polishing step and really take out all that fuzziness. Faster hand movements, lower speed, lower pressure. Those are all things that are gonna minimize the amount of haze you're putting into a panel. Again, I'm not expecting anything crazy here. I do think we're gonna have to do some pretty crazy polishing. And as expected, it's still pretty dang hazy. Step 6, the final polish. This is a Lake Country, I believe it's called an HDO polishing pad. This is gonna be not the finest pad you could possibly find, but it's gonna be just a step above. And I can almost guarantee this is going to take care of all of our issues when it comes to that haze. So same thing with the cutting pad. I do like to prime these pads a little bit. It's a little bit of a different process though. Using water, spraying it on that pad, making sure it has that lubrication, and then going in with our polish, putting 4 stripes, just like that. Maybe you could put more, maybe you could put less. You guys can get mad at me in the comments if I'm doing this wrong, but this has worked for me for many years now. And this is the next step in that priming process. We're basically just gonna put this on the panel and we're just gonna let this machine run on a low speed, which is at 2, for 20 seconds to really fill up that pad with all this polish. Same thing with the cutting pad. You can clean these, and I'm gonna do that right now. And then I'm just gonna do one final, last light polish to really bring out more depth and more gloss in this paint. And let's take a look at what this looks like. This might need even more polishing. We shall see. There was quite a bit of haze in this. From the looks of it, we have removed all of the haze that I was talking about. There's really no more polishing you can do besides possibly what's called a jeweling step. But that jeweling step is not what we're going to be doing today. This 2-step correction is something I would say 100% of people are going to be stoked with. But if you really do want that last 5% of gloss, you can add another polishing step on top of that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a 2-step correction. That is what I think most of you are going to need on your vehicles to really bring them back to life and completely undo all of the paint damage that has been done to them with improper car washes, rubbing up against it, dusting a car down, and about a million other things that can cause a bunch of scratches and swirls in a car. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope that it helped you guys. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you have any video ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out again. Leave a comment below if you are planning on correcting your car, and please shoot me over a picture. I'd love to see it, and I'd love to help you if I can. Mad Vehicle Protection, Simi Valley, California. Precise results driven by the right process. I'm Dylan, and I'll see you in the next one.